The Childhood of Jesus, the Gospel of James, Biographical Gospel of the Lord. Chapter 34, The Journey to Tyre. After this discussion with the captain, Joseph said to his sons, "Bestir yourselves and load the pack animals. Then saddle the 6 new donkeys for me and for you, and the old tried one for Mary. Take along as much of the foodstuffs as you can, but we will leave the oxen cart here with the midwife as a keepsake and reward for taking care of us." Thus the oxen cart was taken over by the midwife and was not used for work henceforth. Salome now asked Joseph if she might not go with him. Joseph answered, "That depends on you, but you know that I am poor and can pay you no wage if you wish to serve me. If you have the means and can provide yourself with food and clothing along with me, you are surely welcome to come along." At this Salome asserted, "Listen, son of the great King David, my wealth shall suffice for 100 years, not only for me, but for your whole family. For I am wealthier in worldly goods than you might suppose. So wait only an hour more, and I shall stand here laden with treasures, ready to go." Here Joseph replied, "Salome, listen. You are a young widow and a mother, so you will also have to take your 2 sons along. Now this will cause you much work, and I do not have another minute to lose, for in 3 hours Herod will already make his entry here, and his advance messengers and runners will arrive already in 1 hour. From that you can see that it is impossible for me to wait until you are ready. So I would say that you will do better if I am not held up on your account, and when, according to the Lord's will, I return some day, I shall make my home in Nazareth again. Now, since you would really like to be of service to me, then go to Nazareth when you get a chance, and lease my farmstead for another 3 to 7 or 10 years, so it will not fall into strange hands." At this, Salome desisted from her wish, and contented herself with this task. Joseph then embraced the captain, blessed him, and then called Mary, so she with the baby might take her place on her pack animal. When everything had thus been prepared for the departure, the captain asked Joseph, "Man in my highest esteem, will I ever see you and this child with his mother again?" And Joseph replied, "Hardly 3 years will go by until I, the child and his mother, will greet you again. Be assured of that, and now let us depart. Amen." Here Joseph mounted his beast of burden. His sons followed his example, whereupon Joseph grasped the reins of Mary's pack animal, and amid praises to the Lord led it out of the cave. When everyone was outside, Joseph saw a great many people begin to press out from the town to watch the departure of the newborn. This urge to stare was most inopportune for Joseph, so he asked the Lord to shield him as soon as possible from this inordinate desire of idle people to gape. And behold, a thick fog quickly descended on the whole town, and it became impossible for anyone to see even 5 steps ahead. At this the crowd became vexed, and withdrew into the town, and Joseph, led by the captain and Salome, was able to reach the nearest hills unseen. When he reached the border between Judea and Syria, the captain gave Joseph a letter of safe conduct to the governor Cyrenius, who was set over Syria. Joseph accepted this with thanks, and the captain said, "Cyrenius is my brother. More I need not tell you, so travel safely and return in the same manner." Here the captain turned back with Salome, and Joseph travelled on in the name of the Lord. About noontime Joseph reached the high point in the hills at a distance of 12 hours from Bethlehem. The high point lay wholly in Syria, which in that day was called Coelio-Syria by the Romans. For Joseph had to take this more roundabout way, since no safe route led from Palestine to Egypt. And his route of travel was as follows. The first day he came into the vicinity of the little town of Bostra. There he spent the night praising the Lord. Here it also happened that robbers came to him so they might rob him. But when they saw the baby, they fell on their faces, worshipped him, and then fled into the hills in great fear. The following day, Joseph again crossed a massive highland, and that evening arrived in the region of Panea, a little border town between Palestine and Syria to the north. From Panea he reached the province of Phoenicia on the third day, and came into the neighbourhood of Tyre, where on the following day he went with his letter of safe conduct to Cyrenius, who at that time was present in Tyre on matters of state. Cyrenius received Joseph in a very friendly manner and asked him what he might do for him. Joseph answered, "That I might get to Egypt safely." And Cyrenius observed, "Good man, you have taken the long way around, for Palestine is obviously much closer to Egypt than Phoenicia. Now you will have to travel through Palestine again, and must go from here to Samaria, from there to Joppa, thence to Ascalon, then to Gaza, from there to Geras, and from there finally to Elusa in Arabia." Here Joseph was sad because he had thus gone astray. But Cyrenius took pity on Joseph and said, "Good man, it pains me to see your trouble. You are, to be sure, a Jew and an enemy of the Romans. But since my brother, who means everything to me, likes you so well, I will also do you a favour. See, tomorrow a small but seaworthy ship leaves here for Ostracene. With it you should arrive there in 3 days, and once you are in Ostracene, you are already in Egypt. And I shall give you a letter of safe conduct with which you will be able to remain in Ostracene without hindrance, and will also be able to buy yourself some property. But for today you are my guest, so have your baggage brought in." Chapter 35. The Melting of the Idols. And Joseph went outside and led his family to the house where Cyrenius lived, and the latter promptly ordered his servants to provide for Joseph's pack animals, and led Joseph with Mary and the 5 sons into his most ornate chamber, in which everything was lavishly decorated with gold, silver, and precious stones. Now on a table of white, very finely polished marble, there stood a mass of statues about a foot in height, exceedingly well formed in Corinthian bronze. Here Joseph asked the governor what these statues might represent. The governor replied in a friendly manner, "Good man, see, these are our gods. We must display them and buy them from Rome according to law, even though we do not believe in them. I look upon them only as works of art, and in that alone do these images of the gods have some sort of nominal value to me, but otherwise I can only look upon them with the utmost disdain." Joseph thereupon said to Cyrenius, "But if that is all you believe, then you are a man without God and without religion. Does that not bother your conscience?" And Cyrenius replied, "Not in the least, for if there is no other God than these bronze ones here, then any human being is more of a god than this stupid bronze in which there is no life. Now I do believe that there is some sort of true God who is eternally alive and almighty. Therefore I have only disdain for such old nonsense." Now Cyrenius was also a great friend of children, and for that reason approached Mary, who was holding the child in her arms, and asked her whether she were not tired from constantly carrying the child. And Mary said, "O mighty ruler of the land, I am indeed very tired by now, but my great love to this my child makes me forget all fatigue." Here the governor said to Mary, "See, I am also a great friend of children, but although I am married, nature or God have not blessed me with posterity, so I am given to not seldom adopting strange children, even those of slaves, as my own. Now I do not intend to say therewith that you should also give me yours, for he is indeed your life. But I would like to ask you to lay him upon my arms, so I might fondle and caress him a little." Since Mary found the governor to be of such an affectionate nature, she answered, "Whoever is like you in his heart may indeed take this my baby on his arms." Here Mary handed the baby to the governor to be caressed, and when the governor took the baby on his arms, such a feeling of joy came over him as he had never before experienced. And he carried the baby back and forth in the chamber, and thus also brought him close to the table bearing the Roman gods. But this approach immediately cost all the heathen statues their existence, for they melted like wax on red-hot iron. At this Cyrenius was profoundly shocked, and he exclaimed, "What goes on here? The hard bronze has utterly dissolved, and not even a trace of it remains. You wise man from Palestine, do explain that to me. Are you then a magician?" Chapter 36. Joseph vindicates himself before Cyrenius. Joseph was greatly surprised at this himself, and said to Cyrenius, "Listen to me, mighty ruler of the land. It cannot be unknown to you that according to the law of my people, every sorcerer must be burned. If, accordingly, I were a sorcerer, I would not have become as old as I am, for as such I would long ago have fallen into the hands of the high priests in Jerusalem. Hence the only thing I can tell you here is that this manifestation must surely be connected with the great holiness of this child. For even at the birth of this child, signs occurred at which everyone was amazed. The firmament stood open, the winds were hushed, the brooks and rivers stood still, the sun remained standing in the horizon. The moon did not leave its position, not for about 3 hours. Thus the stars did not move onward either. The animals did not feed nor drink, and everything which normally creeps and stirs sank into a dead rest. I myself was walking and had to remain standing." When Cyrenius heard this from Joseph, he said to him, "So this is that remarkable child of whom my brother wrote me with the words, 'Brother, I must give you the following news. In the neighbourhood of Bethlehem a child has been born to a young woman of the Jewish nation, from which emanates a great wondrous power. I am just about convinced that he is a child of the gods. But his father is such a completely honest Jew that I just cannot bring myself to undertake a closer investigation of the matter. If you should happen to come to Jerusalem in the near future, it might not be uninteresting to you to visit this man in Bethlehem. I keep on thinking that the child is some sort of masked young Jupiter, or at least Apollo. But come and use your own judgment. See, good man, that much of the matter is known to me, but what you have now told me is quite new to me. Therefore tell me whether you are the same man of whom my brother informed me from Bethlehem." And Joseph answered, "Yes, mighty ruler, I am the same. And it is well for your brother that he did not tell you more about the child. For he received a word from heaven to be silent about that which took place. Truly, had he told you more, then that would have happened with Rome, which there before your eyes just happened to the images of the gods that stood there on the table. And great good fortune to you and your brother, if you will be silent. For you shall both be blessed for that by the Lord, who is the eternally living God, the creator of heaven and earth." These words instilled a great respect of Joseph in Cyrenius, and a fear of the child, so that he promptly laid the child on Mary's arms again. After that he again turned to Joseph and said, "Good, upright man, now listen carefully to what I shall say to you. For a good thought has just come to my mind, which you shall hear and answer me concerning it. See, if this child is of divine descent, then you, as his father, must also be the same. For ex tronco non fit mercurius, and grapes do not grow on thorns. Neither can a child of the gods be a descendant from an ordinary human being. Now you, as well as your 5 other sons who are standing behind you, appear to be only ordinary human beings to me. Yes, even the young mother, while to be sure a well-mannered Jewess, does not seem to have anything particularly divine about her. That requires a great, almost unearthly beauty and great wisdom, as we know from the traditional stories about those women with whom at one time the gods are said to have consorted, which to believe requires an indeed great faith that I do not in the least have. Besides, I must also call your attention to something else, which is that it was possible for you with your divine child, as one wishing to travel from Bethlehem to Egypt, to have gone astray to here, as manifest by your being sad and confused when I pointed out to you that you had gone so far astray on the way to Egypt. Should your God, or the gods of Rome, really be ignorant of the nearest route from Bethlehem to Egypt? See, these are sharp contradictions which build up the more one pursues the matter. And on top of that, you have even made a threat as to the destruction of Rome if I or my brother were to betray the child. Now, why should gods threaten the weak mortal, as if they were afraid of him? After all, they need only to openly set foot on the earth, and everyone must blindly obey their mighty will. So you see, your whole story seems to me to be nothing but a weak deception, intended to mislead me so I might not recognize you for what you really are, either a Jewish magician who sets out for Egypt to make his living with his trade there, since his life is not safe in his homeland, or perhaps even a crafty Jewish spy, bribed by the power-hungry Herod to detect how the Roman shore fortifications are set up. I do, of course, have the letter of safe conduct from my brother, and the earlier letter which I mentioned to you, but I still have not discussed this with my brother, and therefore these documents could be forged, for my brother's handwriting can also be imitated. And I now consider you to be both, in other words, a magician and a spy. Now justify yourself in every detail, otherwise you are my prisoner and will not escape a just punishment." At these words Joseph looked Cyrenius firmly in the face and asserted, "Send a fast messenger to your brother Cornelius, have him take both letters with him, and your brother shall bear witness whether matters with me are of such a scandalous nature as you are of the bad opinion. And such I now insist on from you, for my honour is justified before the eternal God, and shall not be crushed underfoot by a pagan. For while you are a patrician of Rome, I am none the less a direct descendant of the great King David, before whom the circle of the earth trembled, and as such I will not allow myself to be dishonoured by a pagan. And I shall not leave your side now until you have restored my honour to me, for no pagan shall deprive me of the honour which I have received from God." These energetic words took Cyrenius aback, for in this manner he, as governor, who had command over life and death without restriction, had never heard anyone speak to him. He therefore thought by himself, "If this man were not conscious of an extraordinary power with him, as concerns me, he could not speak like that. Hence I must talk to him now in quite a different manner." Chapter 37. A golden goblet is sublimed. After determining on this, Cyrenius again turned to Joseph and said, "Good man, you should not hold that against me, for you will surely concede that I, as governor, do after all have the right to cross-examine someone to find out if he is a friend or enemy of the state, and that I could not exempt you therefrom, as gladly as I would otherwise have done, for that you need only look at yonder disastrous table which has been freed from its decorations, and it must surely be evident to you that one must look upon people of your kind a bit more sharply than upon those who only drift about as insignificantly as daily flies. Now I do not feel that I insulted you thereby, but on the contrary, only gave you a distinction in that I adjudged you to be that important, and spoke to you as becomes me as governor. You see, I am interested in nothing else than the truth about your background, because I judge you to be a truly noteworthy man. Therefore, I purposely raised doubts about you, so you should fully assert yourself before me. Now, your manner of speech has shown me that you are a man in whom there is no deceit. I therefore need neither a second message from my brother, nor any binding documentary proof from some other source, for I am now convinced that you are a completely honest Jew. Tell me, is there any need for more than that?" And Joseph answered, "Friend, see, I am poor, but you are a mighty ruler. My riches are my loyalty and faith to my God, and my complete honesty towards everyone. But you, in addition to representing the emperor, are also extremely wealthy in the riches of the world, which I do without. When someone slights your honour, you still have the riches of the world to fall back on. But what is left for me if my honour is taken from me? You can buy honour for yourself with the treasures of the world, but with what shall I buy it? For that reason, the poor man, once he has lost his honour and freedom to a rich man, becomes a slave. But if besides that he has secret riches somewhere, he can again buy honour and freedom. Now you threaten to make me your prisoner. Say, would I then not have lost all my honour and freedom? And was I then not right in defending myself, since I was after all called to account by you, the governor of Syria and the co-governor of the coast of Tyre and Sidon? Here Cyrenius said, Good man, I now beg you, let us wholly forget what is past. See, the sun now stands close to the horizon. My servants have prepared the evening meal in the dining hall, so come with me and refresh yourselves. For I have not had Roman foods, but those of your people prepared, which you are permitted to eat. So follow me without any ill feelings against me, now your friend. Hereupon Joseph followed Cyrenius into the dining hall with Mary and the 5 sons, and was greatly amazed at the indescribably rich splendour of the tableware, which was mostly wrought of gold, silver, and precious stones. And since the ornate vessels were decorated with all manner of images of pagan gods, Joseph said to Cyrenius, Friend, I see that all these vessels for your table are decorated with your gods, and you already know the power that emanates from my child. See, if I sit at your table with my wife, and my wife with her child, you will instantly lose all your rich tableware and vessels. Hence, I would advise you to either have vessels set up that are quite plain or common earthenware, or I will not guarantee you your gold and silver. When Cyrenius heard this from Joseph, he was startled and at once followed Joseph's advice. The servants promptly brought the foods in dishes of earthenware, which were quite smooth, and quickly set the gold and silver dishes aside. But his curiosity nevertheless enticed Cyrenius to bring a magnificent gold goblet near the child, to ascertain for himself whether the nearness of the child would really have such a destructive effect on gold as formerly on the bronze images. And Cyrenius had in fact to pay for his curiosity with the sudden loss of the precious goblet for a time. When he had thus suffered the loss of the goblet, he took fright and stood there as if he had received an electric shock. Only after a while did he say, Joseph, you great man, you advised me well, and I thank you for it. But I myself will be accursed if I leave this spot before I find out from you just who this child is, since he has such power at his disposal. Here Joseph turned to Cyrenius and briefly told him the story of the child's conception and birth. And Cyrenius, upon hearing Joseph tell this in a firm tone of voice, fell down before the child and worshipped him. And behold, at that instant the destroyed goblet stood on the floor in front of Cyrenius, but quite smooth and of the same weight. Hereupon Cyrenius arose and just could not help himself for joy and happiness. Chapter 38. In the Lowliness of the World. In this happy frame of mind, Cyrenius said to Joseph, Hear me again, O great man. If I were now emperor in Rome, I would abdicate the throne and the emperor's crown to you. And if the Emperor Augustus knew about this child as I do now, he would do the same. For while he takes great stock in the fact that he is the mightiest emperor on earth, so do I also know how highly he places all things divine far above himself. If you wish, I will write the emperor and guarantee you in advance that he will bring you to Rome amid the greatest honour, and will build to the child, as an unequivocal son of the Most High God, the greatest and most glorious temple, and will exalt him therein to the skies, and will himself lie in the dust before the Lord, whom the elements and all the gods must obey. and that such is the case with the child, I have now convinced myself for the second time, since not even Jupiter is able to protect himself from him, and no metal can withstand his power. As I said, if you wish, I will send messengers to Rome still today. Truly, that would cause an incomparable sensation in the great imperial city, and would surely humble the proud hierarchy of priests to some extent, who are anyhow at a loss as to how they might further deceive and betray mankind most effectively. Hereupon Joseph answered Cyrenius, "Dear good friend, do you really suppose that Rome's veneration means anything to him whom the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all the elements of the earth must obey? Had he so willed that all the world should honour him like an idol, he would have come down to earth in all of his infinite, eternal, divine majesty, before the eyes of all the world. But thereby all the world would also have been condemned to its judgment. Instead, he has chosen the lowliness of the world so he might bless the world, as it is written in the book of the prophets, so leave well enough alone as concerns the message to Rome. Now if you want to see Rome destroyed, then do as you please, for this one is come for the fall of the world of the high and mighty, and for the redemption of the lowly, a consolation to the sorrowful, and for the resurrection of those who are held in death. This I firmly believe in my heart, but I have revealed this my faith only to you, otherwise no one shall hear it spoken of by me. So keep these words as a sacred trust in your heart until that time when a new sun of life will rise for you, and you will be well off." These words went like arrows into the heart of Cyrenius, and completely changed his attitude to the extent that he would immediately have given up all his authority and assumed a lowly station in life. But Joseph said to him, "Friend, friend, remain what you are, for power in the hands of men of your kind is a blessing of God for the people. You see, you are what you are neither from yourself nor from Rome, but only from God. Therefore remain what you are." Here Cyrenius praised the unknown God, then sat down at the table in a happy frame of mind, and ate and drank with Joseph and Mary. Chapter 39. The Mastery of Grace over Death. While the Romans as a rule were used to lengthy feasts, Cyrenius was nevertheless an exception. When he did not have to arrange such feasts now and then in honour of the emperor, a meal with him was only short, for he was one of those philosophers who say, "Man does not live to eat, but eats only to live, and that does not require feasts that last for days." Thus the hallowed meal was short and was only intended to restore the body. After the short meal, Joseph thanked the Lord for food and drink and blessed the host for it. Cyrenius, deeply touched at this, admitted to Joseph, "Oh, how indeed exalted is your religion above mine! How much closer are you to the Almighty Deity than I! And how much more of a human being are you than I can ever be?" Here Joseph answered Cyrenius, "Noble friend, you are anxious about that which the Lord has just now bestowed upon you. But I say to you, remain what you are, but humble yourself in your heart only before the eternal Lord God, and secretly try to do good to all men, and you are as close to God as my fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. See, in this child the Almighty God has visited you. You have carried him on your arms. What more do you want? I tell you, you are saved from eternal death, and henceforth will neither see, nor feel, nor taste death." At this, Cyrenius sprang up for joy and exclaimed, "Oh man, what are you saying? I shall not die? Oh, tell me, how is that possible? See, until now no man has been spared from death. Shall I then really be accepted into the ranks of the eternally living gods, just as I now live?" And Joseph replied, "Noble friend, you did not understand me. Now I will tell you what will take place at your earthly end. Had you died without this grace, then severe illness, pain, sorrow, and despair would have put your spirit and your soul to death along with your body, and nothing would have remained for you after this death than a dull, tormenting consciousness of yourself. In that case you would resemble someone who was half buried to death in his own house, which collapsed on him, and who was therefore buried alive and must feel and taste death in this manner in bitter despair, since he is totally unable to help himself. But if you die in this grace of God, then only this heavy body will be taken from you, and you will awaken to an eternal, most perfect life, in which you will no more ask, "Where is my earthly body?" And once the Lord of life calls you, you will be able to put your body aside yourself like an old, burdensome garment, when you have received your spiritual freedom. These words made a most profound impression on Cyrenius. He therefore fell down before the child and entreated him, "O Lord of the heavens, so then retain me in such grace." And the baby smiled at him and lifted a little hand over him. Chapter 40. Mary's wisdom astonishes Cyrenius. After that Cyrenius arose and said to Mary, "O happiest of all women and all mothers on the earth, tell me, how does your heart feel, since you surely have the fullest conviction within yourself that heaven and earth here rests upon your arms?" And Mary replied, "Friend, how can you ask me what your own heart tells you? See, we walk the same earth which God created by his will. We constantly tread on his wonders with our feet, and still there are millions upon millions of people who would rather bend their knees before the works of their hands than before the eternally true and living God. Now if the great works of God are unable to awaken the children of men, how then shall a child in diapers bring that to pass? For that reason, it will be given to only a few to recognize the Lord in the child, only to those who, like you, are of good will. And those who are of good will do not need to come to me so I might tell them how I feel in my heart. The child will reveal himself in their hearts, and will bless them and will let them feel like the mother feels who carries the child on her arms. I am very happy, yes, immeasurably happy, that I carry this child on my arms. But in future, all those who carry him only in their hearts will be greater and happier still. Do you also carry him imperishably in your heart, and you will receive that of which my husband Joseph has assured you." When Cyrenius heard these words from the lovely Mary, he was greatly astonished at her wisdom. He therefore said to Joseph, "Listen, you most fortunate of men on the earth. Who would ever have looked for such truly deep wisdom in your young wife? Truly, if there really were a Minerva, she would have to hide herself in the depths of the earth from this most captivating mother." And Joseph replied, "See, every human being can be wise in its way from God, but without him there is no wisdom on the earth. This also explains the wisdom of my wife. And since the Lord in times past has already spoken to men by the mouths of animals, why should he not do so through men? But let us leave that be now, for I believe it is time to plan for the departure tomorrow." Here Cyrenius said, "Joseph, do not worry about that, for everything has long been attended to, and tomorrow I will accompany you to Ostracene myself." Chapter 41. The Voyage to Egypt. Thereupon Joseph said to Cyrenius, "Noble friend, your intention is worthy and good, but you will hardly be able to carry it out. See, this very night letters will arrive for you from Herod, in which you will be requested to seize all male children along the sea-coast in their 1st and 2nd years, and to send them to Bethlehem so Herod may kill them there. Now you are of course able to oppose Herod, but your poor brother will unfortunately have to go along with this evil business, so he will not expose himself to the bite of this most venomous of all serpents. Believe me, while I am now with you, murder stalks in Bethlehem, and 100 mothers are rending their garments in despair because of the cruel loss of their children. And all that is taking place because of one child, of which the 3 wise men from Persia declared, in the spiritual sense, that he would be a king of the Jews. But Herod understood a worldly king thereby, and that is why he wants to kill him, since he wants to bring the sceptre of Judea on his posterity, and fears that this one might wrest it from him, when actually this child only came into the world to redeem mankind from eternal death. When Cyrenius heard this, he sprang up in fury against Herod and announced to Joseph, "Listen to me, O man of God. This monster shall not make use of me as his tool. This day I shall depart with you, and you will find a good night's lodging in my own 30-oared ship. In the meantime I shall instruct my most trusted and by all the gods sworn officials what they are to do with all messengers who arrive here with dispatches for me. See, according to our secret laws, they must be detained until I return. The letters will be taken from them and must be sent after me unbeknownst to the messengers of Herod, so I may know what is in them. Now I already know what the contents of these letters are certain to be, and I also know for how long I shall be gone. Should other messengers follow, the detention tower will hold them also until I return. So then have your family get ready for the journey, and we will promptly board my seaworthy ship." Joseph was satisfied therewith, and in 1 hour all were comfortably lodged on board ship, wherein Joseph's pack animals were also well accommodated. A north wind blew, and the voyage progressed smoothly. The voyage lasted 7 days, and all of the ship's company made assurances that never before had they rowed through these waters without the least hindrance, which they felt was all the more remarkable this time since, as they said according to their belief, Neptune was dealing with his element in a remarkable way, for he was putting his creations in the depths of the sea in order, and was holding a council with his attendants. Here Cyrenius said to the wondering ship's crew, "Listen, there are 2 kinds of ignorance. One is of one's own free will, the other is imposed. If yours were freely held, then it would be possible to help you, but you are held in the one that is imposed and sanctioned by law, and there one cannot help you. So you may as well hold to the idea that Neptune has lost his triad and does not trust himself to chastise us now with his scaly hand for the sacrilege of sailing across his domain." Hereupon Joseph asked Cyrenius, "Is it not customary to reward the ship's company? Tell me, and I will do what is fitting so they shall not speak ill of us." At this Cyrenius said, "Do not worry about that. See, they are under my command and have their pay for their service, so you need not be concerned there." Joseph answered, "That is of course true, but they are also human beings like we are, so we should deal with them as such. Insofar as their ignorance is sanctioned by law, let them dedicate their outer self to it, but my gift shall make their spirit free. So let them come over here, that I may bless them and they may begin to realize in their hearts that the Son of grace and salvation has risen for them also." Here Cyrenius called the ship's company together, and Joseph spoke the following words over them. "Hear me, O faithful servants of Rome, and this your master. You have guided the ship faithfully and diligently, and you shall have a good reward from me, who benefited from this voyage. Now I am poor, and have neither gold nor silver, but I have the grace of God in rich measure, which is the grace of that God whom you call the Unknown. May the great God pour this grace into your breast, so your spirit may be awakened." At these words, all of them experienced a feeling of infinite joy and began to honour and praise the unknown God. And Cyrenius marvelled at this effect of Joseph's blessing, and then had himself blessed by him also.